Let's look at a minimum C# class, just a basic class. Now, normally we have our system namespace here using system semicolon. Then we have a namespace, and within a namespace you can have one or more classes. Like I said, one class per file in the directory structure, but the namespace can have many classes. You're just going to put namespace, the namespace that you want to specify, and wrap that around your classes that you're going to create. So nested within, we have our class here, CMyClass, and this class is just going to work within the main structure of the application. Main is that entry point into our program. You can see that this is just going to allow us to work with parameters on our console application. We'll talk about static and void. These are indicators here. These are describing the main function here, the main method call, and how we can handle it. This isn't going to return any information back to the console. Void is how you would do that. We'll talk about that in detail later. So this particular main function, this main method, this is just going to write to the console application hello world. That's about it. So this is a minimum class. It's not doing much, but this is how it would work. The curly brackets are going to indicate the nesting structure. So everything within these curly brackets here are going to be associated with that class, and normally this is how you would do it on the next line as opposed to up here. That's the normal convention for doing that. But if we look within Visual Studio, we have a little bit of a more advanced class, but it's a minimum class nonetheless. You could take a look at the minimum class folder to find this particular file. And you can see that, again, we have our namespace up here. You can click to collapse that if you wanted to in Visual Studio. So that's our class. We have what's called a default constructor, which is doing just that console.writeLine. The same thing, except we're not doing it within our main function. You're doing it outside within the constructor of a class. Constructor just is the point at which your class is constructed, created. In C++, you are familiar with destructors, and that is something that we can avoid in C#, but a destructor is going to destruct your class. Here, we're just dealing with a default constructor, and then we have an additional constructor here. This is a custom constructor, and this is going to allow us to create a different way to look at our class, to create our class in a different way. And we'll see that later in the advanced sections on working with classes. So this is more of an elaborate class. It's still a minimum class, a basic class. You're going to initialize some public data, some public variables. You might even want to put them as private. We'll talk about how we deal with the variables and what public and private data is going to be. And then we just have our main entry point again, and we have a different way that we're going to work with this main call here. We're going to actually pass back data. So this is where that int comes into play here. We're returning a 0, just a default way to work within an application. So if we build this particular application, then we can take a look at it within the console. Just drag the application into our console, hit enter. You see hello world, this is constructing our class, and then that value here, which is just what we added up, which is basically going to be nothing at this point. But it's actually writing the default constructor here, information, in a different way than our little example in our PowerPoint slide. And then we're actually constructing a class, which we'll explain in great detail, and we're just writing some more information to the console. So that's how a class is created and manipulated in a minimum way within the C# environment.